Socrates, thousands of years ago, he said the same thing. Question everything. You know, so he's like, why do you think that? You know, why is this wrong and why is this right? I think that's the answer. Just question everything. Like any view you have, like question it, put it on trial, for and against. Why do I think what I think? What are the reasons? What, you know, and there's sort of what my argument's made up of, what backs them up. Then just play the role of the, sort of the judge of the jury. Just do that, weigh things up, question everything. That's what Socrates said, right? Just question everything. He got killed for it, though.
So maybe that's not the best advice.
You know what I mean?
Maybe that's not the best advice, to question everything. You end up before our head's gone. But no, I completely agree. I think, you know, the reason he got killed for it is because, you know, they saw the impact that he was having on the youth.
Yeah, well, people were stopping for the first time, right? And they were going like, why do we believe what we believe?
Yeah.
Why? What's good? You know, obviously, like, there's that question of like,
what is truth and all this stuff? Yeah.
Is morality just convenient?
Yeah.
You know, like Plato writing about that.
Yeah.
Public. What, you know, is morality convenience or is it objective? So question everything. That's it. Like, that's what I think. Just question everything.
Harvey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother.
How you doing?
Really good. Looking forward to having a interesting convo. Just bounce off each other. We left off last time we spoke. Sort of went on tangents relating to like psychology and philosophy. So that's like, I love stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to chatting and, you know, see where it goes. And yeah,
absolutely, man. I'm so happy. Like I said it to you before we started, I'm so happy that you're here, because last time we had this conversation, we ended up like veering towards philosophy towards the end, and I was like, oh, we don't have enough time, and then we're like, we got to do this again. So like, I'm happy you're here. I'm happy that you're, you know, same with me, talking about these ideas. And yeah, you're right. I feel like the reason I want to have this conversation, because I feel like philosophy sometimes doesn't get embodied enough. It doesn't get, it's too abstract, you know, these ideas by these people that we read. But we need to bring it to like, we need to try like, you know, understand these ideas so we can bring it into our lives and see how they're applying to our lives. Yeah. So yeah, one of the philosophers that I love, and I know we both love, is Carl Jung. So let's start with the big man himself, Carl Jung himself. When did you get introduced to Carl Jung? What are some of Carl Jung's ideas that you really resonate with you?
So like most people nowadays, Jordan Peterson is pretty much like the modern day philosopher. He sort of synthesizes past ideas. So I watch him all the time, and he'd talk about integrating your darker side and actually how that brings you energy, and it actually benefits you and the people around you if you can fully integrate, you know. So then obviously Jung is huge on that, the shadow. He really looks into the subconscious. And he sort of goes in deeper detail than Jordan Peterson in that respect. So I find that interesting. So that's, basically Jordan Peterson is the reason that I know about Carl Jung.
I think like, to stick on Jung, I feel like Jung's ideas, right? And I think I'm very, very similar to you. Like Jung's ideas are so abstract that you have to have someone try to like explain them to you, especially if you're new to philosophy. So like, like watching different people just like go over like so many videos, right? Where it's like, okay, take an idea by Jung, whether that's the collective unconscious, whether that's the shadow self, whether that's the archetypes, right? It's so good to get introduced to these ideas through that, because then once you're like into these ideas, then it's a way you can go and search for yourself, right? So like for me, right, I was introduced to Jung by watching loads of videos about him. I think mostly was like kind of looking at the self, kind of looking at the shadow self. And then he has this book. What's the name of the book? I might be forgetting the name of the book. But he has this book about the self. I can't remember the whole title, but he just basically looked at the self from different perspectives. And he has a very interesting way of looking at people. Because he like takes inspirations from like Greek and all these different ways of like, you know, looking at people, and then
symbolism as well, you know, for sure.
Symbolism, and then breaking it down and stuff. So yeah, the question I have for you, let's start very simply. What are some of Jung's ideas that you like? You know, do you remember like an idea at the beginning from Jung that, you know, was something that you kind of will gravitate towards? And before you answer that question, I kind of want to start first, right?
Yeah.
Like I was talking about the idea of the self, right? I think Jung's conception of the self is so unique because it goes deeper than the surface. It goes deeper than like this idea of like, oh, you're just a person and you have to just kind of exist in the world. It goes towards like our unconscious and like how deep we think and how we show up in the world, and how the version of us that show up in the world starts internally.
Yeah, that's actually how your personality presents itself. It initially begins under the surface, and then that arises out of that. So yeah, like I remember I watched a lot of videos. One of his biggest quotes is where he describes it as, I think, an island in the ocean, and the ocean is your subconscious, sort of like moving this island around, which is your sort of conscious self, you know. But the subconscious is almost what steers you, and whether you like it or not, it actually controls your behavior, and it presents itself whether you like it or not. But I feel like, yeah, Jung placed a lot more emphasis almost on the subconscious in how it relates to the conscious mind rather than the other way around. But where you address your subconscious with your conscious mind, that's how you can start to then integrate and grow as a person, you know. And you know,
and I think that process of like addressing your subconscious through your conscious mind is such a like integrated way of being, because in order to do that, you have to really understand the things that you do just by like, you know, habit. You know, you have to understand, why do I do this? You know, whether it's like, okay, the way I show up in the world, the relationship between you and your parents, like, why is it like this? Is it something that, you know, in their subconscious that they haven't been able to kind of look at, or in my subconscious I haven't been able to look at?
Even more tellingly is people or traits that you don't like. Often, if you think about why you don't like them, it's normally because you can see yourself and you hate that. So it's your darkest parts of you that you don't even want to look at because you're disgusted by it. So you're like, oh, disgusting behavior. It's like, why do you think that? You know, like, I don't know, he's selfish, or he's rude, or he's sort of too proud, or he's too humble. All of these are different parts of you that you're battling with, you know. Otherwise, why would you be bothered by it?
Absolutely.
You wouldn't be bothered by it if it wasn't some way talking to your subconscious.
Absolutely. Okay, that idea of like what you see in others that angers you, something that you don't like about yourself, is so important. That was like one of the biggest turning points. Made me reflect on like, okay, what other people do has got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But if I'm like affected by it, that means I have not done the internal work. I've not done the internal work to understand why that affects me, you know, why I feel these emotions. So it's like supreme's like, you know, responsibility. It's like, how do I take the responsibility onto me to do the inner work, you know? And I think, okay, let's try bring it from this abstract to like the kind of like a way we can embody it. How difficult was it to do the inner work? Once you started understanding about Jung and started taking some of his ideas, how difficult is it to kind of like, okay, cool, like he told me about looking at the self. How am I going to go about doing that?
It's a work in progress. I feel like it relates as well to discovering self, right? Like individuation, I think it is. So basically, no one actually achieves individuation, but you can become a lot more synchronized, a lot more sort of, what's the word, integrated, if you begin this. So I'm at the point now where I see fragmented parts of myself, but I'm acknowledging them. It's just a good psychological exercise to do, and actually understand that all of these different archetypes that make up your personhood, all of them are you in some way, and how can I sort of start to address them? It's very hard to do, and it's a lot easier in theory, you know. A lot of these philosophers, they have great theory, but a lot of them, they had, you know, a lot of trouble. So, you know, it's not easy. So, but that's sort of the start point, is addressing it. You can't achieve sort of individuality if you don't first address that you're fragmented. If you want to deny that, you won't even begin to integrate, you know. It's impossible. So you have to at least acknowledge it. You know?
I'd completely agree. I feel like it's a split test too, between people who can just take on these ideas, people who reject it, like right out. You know, I feel like I always try to do this. When I speak to my friends about like, yo, like Jung, you know, like I'd be trying to like get them to think about these ideas that they're holding their head on a deeper level. But is very, very telling. Some people will just like immediately be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and reject it. While others will understand that it's more about the play on ideas and more about how do we balance it, rather than just like, you know?
It's so I heard about this, how the brain works. So you have two sides to the brain.
Absolutely.
It's very similar in that respect. So the right brain wants to question everything, I believe, and treat life with more wonder. It's sort of that kid side where you're open to new things. But the left brain wants pure certainty, because it makes life predictable. Even like evolutionarily, like it's a lot easier to just predict things with a clear frame. So basically, you can get to the point of delusion if you only think with your left brain. That's where you become deluded about self. You have all these suppressed sort of darker emotions that you don't understand, so you just ignore them, you suppress them. But if you start to open up a bit and really think, and it's always this dance between the left and the right side, because you need some certainty, but you can't not question things. And I think question everything. You know,
no, 100%. I think like, yeah, balancing both worlds. Understanding there is two, and then finding a way to integrate, like you've been talking about. It's like the first stage to it. A question I had actually when you were speaking is that we see, especially nowadays, there's a fragmented kind of society. You know, our culture is kind of fragmented, and you know, Jung has this idea that, you know, like we were just talking about, what you see in the world, what you reject in the world is something you reject in yourself. Yeah. Do you think the culture war that we're currently having, or what's going on in this kind of society, is more of a philosophical problem? You know, it's more like linked to our inability to integrate our two sides of ourselves. You know, like maybe it's even the past and the future. Like we're kind of stuck in this in-between phase, and that's why there's a gap. That's why there's a kind of like a tension, you know. How, looking at it from a philosophical point of view, how would you describe like what's currently going on in our society?
What do you think?
I think like, you know what it is? I think like, so I was talking to this professor like recently, and he was mentioning about how he believes there's been a gap between the kind of millennials and Gen Z. So there was like Gen X, millennials, and then Gen Z. Yeah, he thinks so. He's a millennial. He says the jump between Gen X and Gen Z is so drastic because millennials didn't actually like impose anything on the world, because they didn't have the opportunity, because the Gen X just kept on like, you know, being in power and all these things, that there's been a difference between ideas, and how Gen X views the world is very different from how Gen Z views the world. And like even that, right? That's a philosophical point of view. That's a philosophical idea. Two different philosophical ideas are battling each other, because Gen Z wants to see the world go forward, because they're like, well, we're here now. You know, we've got these different ideas.
Liberal, progressive. People want to see sort of whether it's even like industry leading, new, innovative ideas. It's very open. Yeah, whilst
more Gen X is like
generations are more conservative. They want to sort of see the things that have always worked to continue to always work.
And you look at like you talk about the right side and left side of the brain. It's basically that en masse, right?
Yeah, that's
like
true.
One is like just like conservative, want to just keep things the same, or like keep things as they know. And the other's like, no, let's open up. Let's look at these new creative ideas, because we've seen the benefit of that, right? And I feel like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the problems that we look at society, we might say it's a cultural thing, but actually, if you look even deeper, it might be a more philosophical thing about how we look at ideas. You know, that's why I'm always trying to like look at stuff. Whenever I see like something about, could this is happening, I go, okay, but how is this, you know, like being affected on the philosophical level, and is this something that's, you know, philosophical,
psychological level too? Yeah, I suppose like. There's no one's correct. Like you say, like it's always this balance. It's always this dance. So you can't just you can't sit on the fence either, right? Which is why it's so hard. But like, yeah, I feel that on the more liberal side nowadays, it's more like, so Jordan Peterson says this, so I'm just going to steal his point. He talks about like the devouring mother, which is sort of like just pure sort of nothing but overfeeding the kid. It's like Hansel and Gretel. She feeds them, and then she cooks them and eats them.
Yeah.
So that's like an old story that sort of reflects a state of psychology that's actually quite harmful if it's not managed properly. So it needs to be balancing, because we can understand people, but we're not devouring in that level of empathy. It's like we all have to cooperate and understand that not everything we say is going to not offend you. Some things you're not going to like. Ultimately, we need open dialogue. I feel like we are losing that.
The open dialogue.
Yeah. So that's a problem. I don't really know how you'd fix it, but
you fix it with conversations, and I feel like I feel like that's like important, and like just honest conversations too. You know, both sides have to be able to educate themselves, and then when you have the conversation, you have to open your heart out and have the dialogue. You know, on that point about the devouring mother, there's a philosopher who's like a student of Jung. His name is Eric Newman, and he has this book called The Great Mother. And The Great Mother is a fantastic book, because it basically talks about the idea that over time, what tends to happen in a culture is that the mother's instinct is to protect, is to kind of, but if they're not careful, the child doesn't go out into the world. Yeah. The child gets, you know, protected so much that it becomes kind of like the Hansel and Gretel, where it becomes overbloated and it isn't able to face the world. And the world is, you know, there's all these things that you have to understand in order to face it. And so It's a massive book. It's a crazy book.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I can imagine probably Jordan Peterson got that out of Jung.
Yeah. It's like, because that's what the most of the is. They just play by like. Actually, on the top, I want to talk about the shadow for a second. Like another Jung's ideas.
Yeah.
What do you understand about the shadow? Can you just give us a little backstory about what you think the shadow means, what he's trying to get at?
Yeah, it's basically suppressed parts of yourself. Most of it, well, it's probably more easily characterized as your aggressive, your undesirable sort of side. It's not very pretty to society. It's not pretty to yourself. You're probably disgusted by your shadow if you don't acknowledge it and accept it and integrate it. So it's like the sides of you that might be resentful, hateful, sort of, even like, you know, some people are so suppressed that they've got like murderous rage, just not even acknowledging. It's like a bomb just sitting there, just ready to blow up. So yeah, your shadow self is, I believe it's part of, it's your subconscious. That part of your subconscious that is more dark and socially unacceptable. That's your shadow, basically.
And how do you come about like accepting that? Like, you know, because you are right. It's a very like rejected part of ourselves, you know. And accepting that can sometimes be difficult if you don't understand the ways in which that would be beneficial to you. You know, I think like to answer my questions, actually, I feel like one of the ways that, so aggression, I think for a lot of young guys is like it's a big thing. It's a big part of the shadow. They feel a lot of like aggressive nature or anger, right? And one of the ways that I've learned to kind of like channel that in the right way is through martial arts.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, cool. There's no point being angry at myself. There's no point being angry at people around me. Let me kind of alchemize this idea and put it towards something that actually will train it and hone it, you know, and like, I found that to be the case where if I put myself in a situation like that, they really help.
So I was going to bounce off that with this quote. So Clara Thompson, I got this off Academy of Ideas. So it says, aggression is not necessarily destructive at all. It springs from an innate tendency to grow and master life, which seems to be characteristic of all living matter. Only when this life force is obstructed in its development do ingredients of anger, rage or hate become connected with it. So that is a great way to see martial arts. If you can integrate that part of you, it's actually great, you know, and it makes you better as a person and more easy to accept things. If you're suppressed and you're not using that aggression, someone winds you up, you know, you're that ticking bomb ready to explode. No, it's not going to be pretty. And whether you like it or not, your subconscious, like you say, it's like it sways that you're the island in the middle of your conscious mind. The ocean keeps swaying you back and forth. If your subconscious is brimming with resentment and anger and you know, unused aggression and sort of ambition, that's not a good state to be in. Even if you're quietly angry and resentful, that's not how you should do it. You need to integrate. You need to channel that, which
into a very different way. 100%. How was martial art helped you channel your shadow? Like, you've been doing it for a long time since you were a kid. How is it over time? Is that something you consciously understand, or is that something just kind of happened over time?
No, I always used to like think introspectively. You know? So I just enjoy the fact that you can have this camaraderie with people whilst at the same time enjoying competition. Like, I love competition. It's such a great release. And when I come out of training, simply like I've just got an airhead. Like I've got no other thoughts. You know? Someone like barges me, just like, don't care. I could like literally just my headphones on, like I'm just gonna walk. Like, I don't care. So it's great for that. And a lot of people that don't train probably are secretly very angry, unless you got a lot of people. Some people go gym, some people play sport, you know, like whatever works for you. But martial arts is a very great example. Obviously it's clear aggression, but it's also, you know, solid competition in good confinements at the same time. You're not hurting anyone purposefully, growing, you're channeling that energy. It's different to just walking around angry all the time.
Yeah, man. Because it's like, dude, you think back to like those kids like at school with the bullies, right? Like they were the most hurt people, like because they couldn't control themselves, so they kind of lashed out at that kid because they thought like, you know, they were lashing out would kind of fix something, you know. And I feel like that's the shadow on display, like just like not integrated. But once you integrate it, then you become more, because it's like you have to be okay with the aspects of yourself that can be angry, you know, but can actually control it. You know, because for example, in a martial arts setting, right, if you're angry while you're while you're rolling, you're going to get absolutely decimated.
Yeah.
The person's going to choke you out. And like, there's nothing you can do about it. You show that all the anger didn't lead anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding that, okay, even though I'm angry, how do I channel this emotion into something that's actually beneficial, you know? Because that's actually the only way that you can, you know, be able to, you know, succeed in that environment. And that kind of teaches you, not just in that kind of environment, but also in life, that if these emotions pop up when I'm angry or something, how do I accept it, analyze it, and use it to help me? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. None of us can do it, but you know, a good thing really is like, if you're really angry, like, would I behave this way, you know, in an environment where I was surrounded by killers? And if the answer is no, then it's like, you need to
relax.
You need to relax. Yeah.
You need to relax. Yeah, no, that's like the best thing about being. So if you on like, you know, when you're doing like martial arts, right? Like if you're there like, oh yeah, I'm big, immediately you're gonna find a black belt who's like, I know seaman. It's gonna come and he's gonna bend you, like it's gonna completely twist you up.
There's nothing like, mate, say even yesterday I was Moro, you know, black belt, amazing pressure, just slowly just moving positions. Just he was just working technique. He's, you know, I'm on my back and I'm like literally like wheezing, like, you know, I can't, like, I'm, you know, it's awful, but mate, it's so humbling, right? So it's like some people don't ever get exposed to that. Your ego is built off your experiences as much as anything else. So it's a great way to rein you in.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
One philosopher that I really resonate with, that I started to really like take notice of when I kind of started doing martial arts, is Musashi.
Yeah.
So a little bit about Musashi, as I understand it. It's been a while since I read his book, but he's a samurai who lived in I think the Edo period, like very, really long time ago in Japan, and he was like an undefeated samurai who would like had like I think over 20 one-on-one bouts. And then afterwards he wrote a book, or it's said that he wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings. And in that book he just talks about the different ways to kind of look at martial arts and how martial arts starts with internal. He talks about discipline, he talks about the inner life, talks about like, you know, some of the concepts that, you know, we know about him is like, okay, like you train with every weapon you have, but you always use your best one. You know, that you prepare, you know, it's about like, you know, I think some of his ideas are kind of like helped with the art of war and, you know, Sun Tzu and everything, but it's about, you know, appearing weak when you're strong. All these different ideas of like, you know, how to master yourself in an arena where everyone else is also looking to, you know, kind of, you know, chop your head off, you know.
Well, do you think that to master yourself, because if you could sum it up, like, in order to master yourself, it goes hand in hand with recognizing your weaknesses and your strengths. Recognizing your weaknesses and strengths, how you master yourself. They're, you know, it's like that. That's why his idea that you can't conquer other people till you conquer your inner self, understand yourself. Also links in with, you know, maybe training every weapon, exposing yourself to every weapon. You can use your strongest one, but you need to really like be introspective and don't hide away from anything that you're not capable of doing yet, that you're struggling with, or, you know, say again, like the shadow part of you that is not so easy to be, you know, to come up. You don't want people around you seeing that side of you, or yourself seeing that side of you. Actually, that's how you can't conquer anything till you conquer that, you know.
Absolutely.
That's basically what his point is, right? Like,
absolutely. And I feel like, because it was such an interesting too, because he's like a martial, like, you know, supreme martial artist, but he was very like focused on just like, you know, calligraphy and just like, you know, words and like, you know, emotions. And so in that time period, especially, that's such a unique thing, you know, and I think that balance is actually what makes him, you know, a prevalent, you know, kind of an important, you know, figure for us to learn from. You know, I feel like people like him show us that you have to be able to like balance the two. You can't be a pure martial artist, because if you are, that's fine, but there's a part of you, there's a missing part of you that you're not integrating.
Not integrating.
You know?
Yeah. Well, again, that's why the shadow is not just your aggression or your sort of your dark side. You know, and it's not this like idealistic bad acts either. It's like your shadow is also like anything that you don't desire in yourself, and that might be like something you're embarrassed. Like maybe you're an artsy person and your friend group, you don't integrate that part because you're sort of scared of what your friends will do. That's cowardice. Like, I know, you know, it sounds harsh, but you know, we all do it. But it stems from being, you know, you're living as a coward in some respect. You're not really meeting yourself eye to eye.
Absolutely. And like, look, I have experience with this. Like when I was a kid, I was a sports person. I've said this many times on this podcast, where I played football, and I played football for like 10, 20 years, right? And then I got to a point where I was really interested in poetry. I started writing poetry, I started sharing poetry with a few friends, but my friends would be like, okay, you should go and perform it. And I was like, nah, that's not me, and that was in that moment I was being a coward. I wasn't able to integrate that part of myself because I had an identity of myself, who I was, and anything I deviated from that would require me to change, would require me to like go to a new environment. And it was easier for me to just say that that's not part of who I was, rather than change and integrate to the new environment. But with enough self-understanding, again, people are young. I think these are like so much important. When you're in a period of change or period of like you're going through something difficult, reading the right philosopher could really put things in perspective. But because reading all these different philosophers made me understand that, this idea of who I am, of like this rigid idea of like I am this person, is all in my mind. And it only works if I kind of pour my life force into it. The minute I decide to go, you know what, I can do different things, that's when I really start to kind of like integrate different versions of myself. And then funnily enough, it helps in other parts of yourself. Becoming a poet has helped me become a better writer, obviously, but a better podcaster, a better, a sports person, because it shows different aspects of a different environment, that you can actually take, whether it's confidence, whether it's like discipline, whether it's like facing your fears, that you can take that and put into different parts of your life.
Yeah, there's loads of crossover in life. Like everything crosses over, really. Like again, like martial arts crosses over with life itself. Like I said last time about how life is a bit like wrestling sometimes. I actually take it back though when I said life isn't a dance. I actually think it's both. So I've changed my mind because it's this constant dancing act between sort of parts of yourself and them in tandem. That's how you integrate. Again, like recognizing that you're fragmented is actually important. You start to recognize them parts of yourself and actually integrate and love that. Ultimately, like that is what it means to integrate and become whole, become yourself.
On that journey to becoming our best self, or becoming ourselves, Jung talks about that, how the culture and society are very important to that. Do you think the culture we have today helps us become our best self?
Go on, what do you think? You start.
I think, I think it's difficult because first off, what I try to do is isolate myself away from the culture. The culture I grew up with is very different. I grew up in, Housden and all these different places. I've learned to just not get bogged down by a certain environment, because the environment I grew up was very chaotic, very much, it was there was poverty around, there was all of this stuff around. I had to kind of in my own mind overcome that and go and put myself in different environments and go that. But I think depending on where you're from, your culture isn't actually there to make you become your best self. Culture is almost a repressive thing. It's like, people tell you this is how we should all be, and if we're not all like this, you're on the fringes. And that's such a difficult thing for an individual. Culture, I believe, society and culture isn't there for an individual. It's actually there for the collective. It's there for collective to kind of like, whether if you're in a capitalist environment, it's there for everyone else to make money. But if you're in like a different environment, it's there for like, different things. So you have to understand what your culture preaches, and then how that matches with what you believe, and then start to build your world out of that and bring something new to that culture.
So Jung speaks about how the collective unconscious, that your subconscious is sort of very linked to that too, right? A lot of the guilt you feel relates to cultural expectations. So like I read this, says like the sea is a symbol of the collective unconscious, and that many people sink in it. And meaning like you can sort of get very swayed by subtle pressure, thinking that it's moral pressure, but actually it's external boundaries created by the society you're in. You're not really living at all by allowing that to sway you. So yeah, I guess like obviously there's always good and bad in culture, but like you say, separating yourself from that collective unconscious, acknowledging that the influence that the sort of subculture has on your subconscious, that's how you can avoid letting it impact you negatively.
Has that been difficult for you? Because for me, I only did that through reading. I read a lot when I was a kid. because that's where my mind could actually have the conversation with these amazing philosophers, amazing writers, and that helped me do it. But it was difficult just actually taking myself from an environment and going up against my culture. Was that a difficult thing for you, or did you find it easy?
Definitely difficult, yeah, for sure. It's like very hard to practice what you're sort of reading about or listening to. Again, we're creatures of habit. Like for thousands of years, we've sort of been sort of swayed back and forth by societal expectations. It used to be more religious, you know, the church and sort of these institutions. And, you know, nowadays it might be more like, I don't know, whether it's liberal pressures or conservative pressures. There's always going to be something around you that's going to influence you. And yeah, I guess it's normal for it to be difficult, because evolutionary, it's actually makes a lot of sense to just do what everyone else is doing, right? Because if you're in the tribe and you don't know what the tribe does, the tribe don't want you in the tribe. You know?
They might leave you.
Yeah, but now we've got so many different tribes that make up society. That's why as well the culture war. So, you know, it's very tribal like that. And again, that's why sort of people take sides, and you can't break out of that perfect mold. That's not convenient for everyone else in that tribe. You've got this tribe going like, I think this, and this. And I hate them people that think this is this, and they're just going back and forth. That's just like there's quite a big space in the middle where most people sit. They're not actually very fixed on anything. They just sort of take what makes sense. So the culture war really is very tribal. And I think that relates to collective unconscious, who you're surrounded by, that pressure to sort of fit that mold. Otherwise, you get kicked out of the tribe. Right, so.
And on that topic then, how do you know which ideas come from yourself, and how do you know which ideas come from the tribe? How do you distinguish the two? Because you're right, it's very pervasive. If you go on social media, within 10 minutes, someone's already telling you what to think. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't know if I actually believe this, or maybe I didn't even have any opinion about this, but now I'm going to make an opinion because this person's telling me to have an opinion, you know?
I find so interesting though. That Socrates, thousands of years ago, he said the same thing, question everything, you know? So he's like, why do you think that? You know, why is this wrong and why is this right? I think that's the answer. Just question everything. Like any view you have, like question it, put it on trial, for and against. Why do I think what I think? What are the reasons? What, you know, and there's sort of what my argument's made up of, what backs them up. Then just play the role of the, sort of the judge of the jury. Just do that, weigh things up, question everything. That's what Socrates said, right? Just question everything. He got killed for it though.
So maybe that's not the best advice.
You know what I mean?
Maybe that's not the best advice, to question everything. You end up before our head's gone. But no, I completely agree. I think, you know, the reason he got killed for it is because, you know, they saw the impact that he was having on the youth.
Yeah, well, people were stopping for the first time, right? And they were going like, why do we believe what we believe? Why, what's good? You know, obviously, like, there's that question of like,
what is truth and all this stuff?
Is morality just convenient? You know, like Plato writing about that. It's public. What, you know, is morality convenience, or is it objective? So question everything. That's it. Like, that's what I think. Just question everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like you have to question everything, because at a certain point, you know, I remember thinking about this. I was like, man, all these ideas, right? There's this book, which is a fantastic book, and I think everyone should check it out. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right? It's by this guy called Robert Piszczek. And in his book, he goes back and questions everything. Because he's basically looking for a definition for the idea of quality. Quality. How do you know something's quality? How do you know something's good? How do you know something's bad? You know, and he goes, well, because people just say it. And he's like, well, no, you can't just say, where does that come from? And so he starts developing, starts breaking apart all these ideas. You know, he breaks apart Socrates, he breaks apart, you know, even people before him. He looks at all these philosophers and, you know, kind of like looks at their sources, okay, where did they get their idea? And then that takes him on a whole journey. And basically his kind of, you know, his kind of like summary is that you have to question everything, because these ideas are stacked on top of each other. You know, people are taking influences from someone else, but they don't even know what that influence comes from. And so you might be like 1,000 years from now, 1,000 years ahead, you think an idea, but you don't understand that it comes from 1,000 years ago, when this person had something that was completely unrelated to what you're thinking about now. So it's like understanding that these ideas aren't self-isolated. They're built on top of each other. Going back and reading, that's why reading history is so important. That's why reading all these philosophers are so important.
Yeah, and they're all sort of like trying to line things up. So there's someone who said about good, like the standard of good, it's like colour. And like you can't describe colour, but it's sort of tangible.
Yeah.
See it.
Yeah.
But like again, like you can't with Jetsi define it. So it's like all these people are sort of building on each other to sort of articulate what truth is. Because I just choose to like align truth with goodness. Like it's untangible physically. Colors like color, like you can't describe it to a blind man, but everyone knows red when they see red, right? So like it's up to you, just question everything, and there is such thing in sort of objective reality, I think. But like, yes, you've got to weigh things up, and your conscience might be sort of influenced by external pressures on in relation to just that pure, that color of truth that you can't find. It's it's
all right. Let's we warmed up now, so let's go a little bit edge closer to these kind of big ideas and try to like kind of dissect them. And there is no right answer, so we're just kind of talking. Right? How do you approach the idea of truth? If someone else asks you, how do I find out what the truth is? How do I figure out what truth is? You talked about objective morality, right? How does someone figure out what that is within themselves or in association to the kind of environment they live in?
Yeah, again, like truth, it's the only thing we've got is to put things on trial. Like as human beings, it's like the same in a court of law, right? Like you got like the prosecutor and they gather all the objective facts possible. And then you've got the defense and they do the same and they present the best case possible on both sides. That's really what we've got. Just put every idea on trial. And yeah, I don't know, like it's super hard to sort of put your finger on it because again, like I say, it's very intangible. So, but yeah, I don't know, like what you think, but that sort of.
Yeah, no, I think about this a lot. I think it's so important. I feel like, there was this idea that like, the questions of philosophy must be tackled before a person has to deal with philosophy. Like the questions of life must be tackled before a person has to deal with life. So for me, when I was young, it was very important for me to understand what truth is, understand what good is, understand in relation to that, and understand, okay, this is what it means when I move out into the world. So how I'm going to act, And so I went on this massive journey in search for what truth is. I stacked religion up against philosophy. I stacked good up against evil, like understanding all these different paths and, the things that go up against each other and how they play a part in each other, Like I was reading Thomas Aquinas, like understanding his idea of religion.
Natural law, stuff like that.
Natural law, like exactly, like all these stuff and just like, okay, how does that relate to what I'm learning now? Because if I just take what I got in the Sunday school, then it's completely different from what he was talking about. What the people who were very close to the idea of Christianity back then, how they looked at it, To answer your question, I think ironically, and I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and I want to know what you think about this. I think the idea of truth is not objective, which is like, probably goes up against.
No, I'm going to add to that. Like quantum physics, two people can sort of be true at the same time.
Exactly that.
So I don't know how it matches up or what, but I really when I heard that, I thought like, that does sort of make sense because you can find something so convincing. In relation to truth, what you think is true, but you can also find something very contradictory that equally feels true. It's just we're just sort of we're just like creatures trying to
grasp at like stuff in the dark. Honestly, it's like this idea, right? It's like the opposite of truth isn't a lie. The opposite of truth is someone else's truth.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's again like because I used to think like someone's got to be right, but I don't. It's just like I say, it's same with quantum physics, like what's observed compared to when it's not observed. I don't know, like a lot of reality maybe sort of comes out of our conscious minds, collectively. Maybe that's what reality reflects our conscious minds as much as conscious minds reflect reality. So
yeah, because I feel like
tandem thing again,
I feel like people want an objective truth because it's easy to wrap your head around. Like religion. I'm a religious person. I believe in God. I believe in the ideas of God. But I believe in that because I think it's true for me. Because I've researched it and I've understood it and I've felt that, unknowing hand in my life. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, cool. Like that's enough evidence for me, But someone else says they don't believe it. I'm not going to challenge them,
I would describe myself in that same way as you. However, I just do think that sometimes groupthink is very dangerous, and it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about any ideology, and they're very linked in that respect, obviously. So if you get into groupthink and you start to have cognitive dissonance, that's where you're just sort of, you're sitting in a territory. The world hasn't got so much wonder about it anymore. So you can sit, like I say, like I believe in God too, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to put ideas on trial all the time.
Absolutely.
I've constantly questioned everything.
Absolutely. I feel like the danger of groupthink is that you dilute the idea itself. You dilute, like, I feel like that's what Christianity did, where it's like they had a truth, they had a pure truth, and then they were like, okay, now everyone has to believe this. And then you're going to run into some problems. Everyone has to believe this for the rest of time. Yeah, you can do 100 years, 200 years, but 1,000 years time, everyone's going to be like, wait, man, the world has changed.
Well, this is controversial, but look, a lot of people now who have a go at people for sort of controversial new ideas and sort of like, sort of, I don't know, what's the word? Like, you know, moving things into another area of discussion. Like the early church fathers would have called you a heretic, probably. Because there's things that they thought that you don't. Not you, I'm talking about in general. So like, I don't know. Again, you just got to be careful not to fall into too much groupthink where you're constantly trying to reaffirm. Because that's where I say we'll talk about the left and the right brain. Like you're going to stop using that part of your brain that's supposed to question. And again, like how are you supposed to relate to anyone if you're fixing a worldview and you're not genuinely having open dialogue, right?
Absolutely.
Are we not, like, isn't that useful? Like that God should will that. If you want to reach truth, putting everything on jury and sort of trusting that nature will reflect that, you know, same as like, I don't know, similar to natural law or whatever. Like logically things might start to line up for you. So if you're not questioning things, actually you might be more ideologically driven than just like personal religious sort of pursuit at that point. So that's what, you know what I mean?
I feel like, yeah, too, like, because again, this is this idea of like truth having different perspective or going from different sides. I do believe truth is individual, because like, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, if I find the truth that works for me, that's dependent on my singular perspective and dependent on my life. Say the truth for you is religion, or say the truth for you is love, right? That's because of the environment that you've...
Love is definitely like
a core truth that we all share, right? Because that's the thing that connects us, you know? So it's like any truth that isn't connective, that is actually separative, can't be universal. And I think that's the kind of like way, I think it's a subtraction thing. You get to the truth by subtraction anything that's false. Anything that it's false with your inner truth, or like the truth of like the two people, you know, like, okay, then that's how you get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, I understand now. Like, this can't be true because there's something false involved in here, you know? I think it's so important when you're building a society, which I think as a society changes over time, we're gonna have a lot of things that we all need to come to terms with, which is like, one of the things is that truth isn't objective. Because once you start pushing the idea that truth is objective, you run into a lot of resistance. And then you know, to get over the resistance, you start to like have groupthink because you feel confident in your group.
That's it.
You know?
And then you're straight away though, you're actually suppressing that shadow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And then you're just getting ready to blow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the same thing. But yeah, I just to be fair, you hit the nail on the head. I haven't got anything to add, to be fair.
All right, then the next question I had then was what part of our modern culture do you think we struggle to integrate? You know, we've talked about the shadow. We've talked about all of these things. What idea do you think we struggle to integrate? And I'll go first, right? Because I feel like, having looked at ourselves, I think we struggle to integrate the idea of like, I was going to say love, but the idea of like selflessness, the idea of working for something, for someone else. We've built such an individualistic culture, that we think individualism means me versus everyone else. And me versus the people that I love, and like it's just me, like hard like this. But that meant that we can't be selfless. And I think our other cultures was very much built on selflessness. You know, there's this idea that I learned recently, where it's like you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the original one apparently was upside down. So the original one, the hierarchy of needs, is basically
self-realization was at the bottom.
Yeah, self-realization was at the bottom, because that was like, they understood that like in order to like, it was more about the group. So that right now is looked at as an individual journey towards the top.
Yeah.
And the more you go to the top, the more actualize yourself. But to actualize yourself is helping other people. So helping other people when it comes to food, helping other people when it comes to like the work that you do, and then as you help other people, as you help the group, you become self-actualized. You know.
Interesting.
So it's like the idea that like this individualistic path that we're all on isn't the best way. Isn't the best way. Like it helps you find yourself, but what do you do after you find yourself?
The thing is, this is so cliche, but it just is. It's just in tandem. It's both. It's always going to be both. Like you say, like if you're too, again, it's just groupthink otherwise. So it is both. But I agree with you at the same time. People are, you know, it's always liberalism. You know, sort of individuality, pushing yourself. Actually, like part of your personality is obviously made up of people around you, right? But again, like evolutionary too. That's just true. You just that's, again, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it's that balance, mate. It's so hard to find. But I hear you though. Like I agree with you. We are very selfishly driven, capitalist sort of dog eat dog. But if you go to other parts of the world, it's not like that.
It's not like that at all.
No.
I was going to ask, what do you think, looking forward, what do you think is going to happen? Like, just making a generalization about, like, because we were talking about morality, right? We're talking about how people view morality and how that's kind of changing. And, you know, how I feel like these days morality is kind of based on the stuff we see online. So, like, trends, groupthink, all these things. We define morality by what everyone else thinks. Yeah? If that was to play out forward, how do you think our society is going to change?
What, like in the direction it's already going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mean the West though? It's got to be the West. So like in the West, again, it was so. It's like binary opposition. You've got like the super like conservatives, or like I don't know, and then you've got like the liberal side. I don't know if we're capable of going in one single direction.
You think there's going to be a split?
Yeah, we're so split. It really like, or at least maybe it's partly due to the media, but it does almost feel like there's binary opposition in society. It's just boom in how people think. So yeah, I don't know. You tell me what you think. I can't. I don't know.
I think there has to be like give and take from both sides. I think there has to be a give and take from both sides. I think they both come from the like it's like the unconscious. You know, this is the idea that Jung has. You know, if you don't develop the unconscious, it will dictate your life, and you call it fate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, nice.
I think there's a lot of the unconscious that's not being, and we just call it fate, and we just call it this is how it is. I think there has to be like a reckoning of just like, I don't know. You have to come together through love and through, like, ironically as that sound, like I feel like our society is built in ways which, if you just look at history, there's been these kind of tension before, and they've resolved it by just either coming together or for a big war, and then you know,
agape, right?
Yeah, like, you know, like love that isn't the
agape, is that how you say it?
Yeah, agape. I think, I don't know. It's Greek. None of us know how to say it.
Yeah. No, that type of love, would be the answer.
Yeah. Like love, and also love for your neighbor. Like you know, I feel like if you're loving someone because you understand that loving this person is actually going to help society, and it's actually what we do as a society. We love each other. That's just you know, that's like an idea that, you know, you can get behind. You know.
Yeah. We are very capitalist though.
Yes.
Also, capitalism is like, it's associated with goodness, right? Because it's freedom, you know.
Yeah.
In America, it's like the American dream. So how are we supposed to reconcile that with this sort of all-consuming love for everyone, but at the same time always trying to get ahead, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's trying to get ahead. I'm trying to get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, how do we reconcile?
Do you think that's our innate nature, or do you think that's based on the environment that we're?
It's in our nature. Of course, we want to get ahead. Always. It's the irony, isn't it? It's like the people who are complaining and they oppress the oppressor, and they get to the oppressor point and they're like, "Am I oppressed?
Am I oppression?
It's all right. It's not my problem anymore." It's always been human nature. It's the same in government. People, you know, they get there and then suddenly, like, they change. You know, presidents, they get there and they change. So, like, you know, that innate need to be above others. You know, if things are going bad, as long as it's going better for me than someone else, right? So we have that sort of tension. But yeah, definitely. It's difficult. We're very multicultural, which is a good thing. But yeah, we don't really have one culture to sort of unite behind. Whereas in the past, I feel like that was religious. So I don't know.
But I mean, like, I'll be the first to say that idea of like religious was very oppressive in some ways too.
Yeah.
Actually, so
psychologically, sometimes
original sin and everything didn't really help people kind of like come to terms with their shadow, you know. I feel like, so I had this interview with this professor, like the same professor I was mentioning. We were talking about Rome. And we're talking about Rome from the perspective of how it develops over time. And Rome was very multicultural. And Rome was very split in a sense because they were colonizing all these different places. And then they'll bring people in. And then there was a time where there was tension because, like, okay, what is Rome? How do we find the idea of what Rome is? And the way they kind of went past that was that they understood that these people, everyone, brought something unique, and you had to champion that, because if you didn't champion that and show how these people can actually bring something to the empire, then it created dissonance within the group, you know. So I feel like this point in time where you're talking about where we don't know we don't have an identity is solved by the leaders, which I don't know if we have any leaders right now, but it's solved by the leaders, you know, taking, you know, a chance to be like, okay, let's actually champion the things that these people bring, because it incentivizes people. It incentivizes people to be like, actually, they do some really good stuff. And like, not just that, like Rome became Rome for what it was because it could go to places and leave people to kind of govern themselves, but they were proud to be Roman. You know, you have to make other people proud, and then the people that are in the core group, they're also proud because they go somewhere and they're respected. You know, that idea isn't really been kind of integrated into our culture. You know, I think, again, maybe veering off topic here, but
no, I agree with you.
You know,
definitely, yeah, we don't have that sort of sense of appreciation for everyone. And again, that is why we need to remember that in the past we have been very tribal. And again, like, it was sort of natural. One person would go and maybe hunt, one person would, you know, make the crops, you know. I know that even is idealistic. It would never have been that simple, but people had set roles and sort of, there was a community there and everyone had their place in it, right? Whilst like nowadays, again, because we've got our own families, we've almost all got our own tribe in this bigger tribe. And then
the tribe is shrunk now, you know?
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, definitely sort of nationalistic identity and stuff is great. I feel like Britain is sort of like, I don't identify with the government. I identify with, like, I don't mean that like anarchist, but I don't identify.
Burn it down.
Yeah, but the people, like the British people, you know, the people that sort of running the trains, we work, you know, your local corner shop and that. These are like that's the identity, right? We get up and work. That's what I identify with. So yeah, like probably championing that. But who's going to be doing it? If it's the elites doing it, we're not going to buy that because we're like,
we don't trust you.
Yeah,
100%.
Trust you.
100%. Yeah, no, I mean, there needs to be a definite political change. But actually, okay, one of the final questions I had actually was about the idea that about the Jung quote: "If you don't integrate the unconscious, it will dictate your life, and you call it fate." How do you understand that in like a daily kind of everyday decision making? How do you kind of like understand that concept? You know, like if there are some things that. And I agree with, you know, that if you don't, you know, understand the reason you do stuff, you keep doing habits over and over again, and then you just be like, this is who I am, this is my personality. How do you think people can go about, like, first of bringing the unconscious to conscious and making sure that it doesn't dictate their life?
Yeah. There's a difference between submitting and accepting. So I think you need to accept every part of yourself because it's you just can't escape it. So again, that's why I like individuation and recognize your shadow. They're very linked. If you're letting your shadow take you over, ironically, it's sort of like, you know, if you're really insecure about something, it's the most obvious thing in the room. Same thing. So I don't know, just acknowledge it and try and make it part of you. If you're aggressive, go to jiu-jitsu or boxing or whatever works. If you're artsy and you're embarrassed about it, just do it. Again, like, mate, no one cares as much as
you think you care. Yeah, literally.
So
that's the most freeing idea, that no one cares. Like,
no one cares.
No one cares.
Yeah. When you're in like, oh, like, how do I look? Like, I'm really worried. Everyone else don't care. Like, I promise you, they're thinking about them.
They're thinking about themselves.
Even if they are judging you, like we were saying before, it's probably because they're seeing something that makes them feel uncomfortable. You know, whether you're different to the tribe and that you're calling out the part of them that they're suppressing now. Next, they can see that you're brave enough to acknowledge them parts of yourself. Or if it's that you like reading and they're like, you're a nerd. It's like, they're just scared to stand out. So, mate, just look, we're all gonna die.
I love it. I love it. This is how philosophers always end. It's like,
it's true
in the end,
mate. Like I say, that's that again, balancing between life and death.
Yeah.
Life is sort of the fear of life is the fear of the group, and the fear of death is the fear of not recognizing who you are, right? Because you're born alone. Well, not, but you know what I mean. It's just you. So.
Memento mori, man. Memento mori. Realize that you would die, man. Yeah. That's such a truth, because you're right. Like, we get so caught up in society and culture and all these things and the reason we should do these things. We spend 30 years like just dream walking, and then we think, oh my God, I'm going to die.
It's like terrifying. But do you know what's even more terrifying? Realizing that you never integrated that part of yourself by the time it's too late. That's scarier than any sort of negative feedback that you're going to get from other people, because you've denied yourself then. It's like, everyone likes me, but I'm not me, man. So I'm not living. I'm dead. You're
dead, but you're waking. You're like, you're walking dead, basically. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like, I feel like once you come to terms with that, you start being free. You start really like thinking free, and you start like, treating people like how they should be treated. Like, once you realize that you're going to die, then why have all these like prejudices? Why have all these like hate in your heart? It's like, you don't like the idea of all these other concepts, the idea of like hate just completely melts away, because you just focus on yourself and focus integrating different versions of yourself.
I'm sorry, I found there's a quote on my phone, actually. I'm going to find it. Well, I'm just going to go through a few of them because they all relate. The integration leads to disobedience the integration of the shadow leads to disobedience and disgust, but also to self-reliance, without which individuation is unthinkable. So and in this one, artists, poets and saints are the ones who threatens the status quo, which each society is devoted to protecting. So like, everyone who did something great was criticised.
Yeah.
I think remembering that is important, because who cares?
100%.
Like, and it's easier to say than do, but that if you remember that.
Okay, final question on memento mori then. When you think about death, when you think about like the fact that you will die, how do you think about it? How do you kind of come to terms with that? How do you talk about the fear of death and the fear of living, that interplay between that? How do you kind of like live life knowing both to be true?
I'm still working out, but I don't know what you think. I'm still we're getting there.
Yeah, no, I used to be very scared of that. Like when I was younger, obviously, because I was a kid. I used to be scared of the fact that I would die, and then I think I reached a point where I realized that I wasn't dead. Like, it was such an obvious, stupid point, but I was so fearful of the end. And I was like, okay, this is the idea. Like, imagine you're dead, and imagine you wake up again. And then, like, you've got, like, the rest of your life to live your second life now. It's like that quote, a person lives 2 lives, and the second one starts when they realize they're going to die. It's basically that.
I love that. Yeah, I've heard that one before. I love that quote. It's great. So I agree with that. It's just like, I've really, actually, I can't add to that, because I think that's spot on. That quote there is spot on. Yeah.
100%.
Why do you need to care so much? Like, it's like, why do you need to care? And it's a question for me to ask myself, to ask yourself. Like, why do you actually care? Again, it's introspection, question everything. Like, who cares? Really.
Before we go, is there any philosophers that you would tell people to check out apart from me? And we've talked about Jung a lot today. We talked about Thomas Aquinas, talked about Musashi, but there's many more philosophers out there that people could check out. Is there any one that you think people could check out to kind of read?
I always just start with Jordan Peterson, because he connects all the good ones. Nietzsche, obviously he talks about people like Dostoevsky, Conscience. I think he's great, because especially if you don't read too much, he'll like really like make it make sense for you. I like Nietzsche's ideas too. He went mad, didn't he?
He did.
He actually went mad.
He went pretty crazy. I mean, you should read when you read some of his work, you're not surprised that, God damn, this guy was, because I feel like you get to a point, he was there for trouble. You get to a point where nothing makes sense, and that's the edge of the, the balance of madness, Was it, if you stay into the darkness stays back. Yeah, type shit.
Yeah.
So, but also check out some Eastern philosophers. I 100% think that Eastern philosophers have a way of understanding the world, Buddha and his kind of philosophy of just like, that overcoming the self. There's a lot of like in the West, understanding the self and like, embodying the self and like, Übermensch and all these ideas.
Yeah.
But the Eastern philosophers overcoming the self and just like leaving that behind and finding the existence where it's like in between that, where you're above the self, You're just looking at the self as if you're meditating. You're looking at the self as just a thought, you know, something that just is, that you don't have to have an emotion towards. You don't have to have like all these, and you can balance, you can like, swing between the two. Acceptance, yeah. And there's no one truth. It's like balancing all of it, you know?
It's mad.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Bro,
I'll give it a read.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, man. I've had a great time.
Bro, yeah, like, I love this stuff. I appreciate it, yeah.
I appreciate you for coming too, man.
Sweet.
I appreciate you for watching too. Until the next time, peace.